Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education, a podcast that focuses on what is happening in education today, connecting everyone to the movers and shakers that are breaking boundaries in the education arena.
Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education. So I try to get this term to fly and no one listens. We have another podcast smash. We have another set of podcasters joining us today. So I'm really looking forward to this, Jerry. You know, I think it's so interesting. I was just talking to a group of teachers yesterday. I said, what is your experience with AI? And they're across the board 100%. Some have not even touched it. Some have dabbled in it. Some use it quite often. One said, I am not feeding the machine. Is that a Terminator quote, I think, or something like that? And
yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
I think so. So I think it's really interesting, but I think we're all just learning right now. But the problem is, sometimes I compare it to the internet, like back in the 90s, like you got to embrace it. You got to go with it. But I think we had time to, what we call surf the net, right? We had time to do that back then. Here, I mean, it's just a tsunami. I guess I'll go with the water theme. So we have to start getting ahead of it before, we're behind. So I'm looking forward to hearing these experts who have their podcast on AI, not just on AI, but it's AI generated. And we have two of their hosts because there's actually a third one that we want to hear about who is AI generated, I think. I don't know. I want to hear more about it.
Yeah, when you said we're having a mashup, this is not your mama's podcast team. I'll tell you, this is futuristic to me. I'm so excited to hear about this. So, Larry and Chris, welcome to LinkedUp Podcast. First of all,
Thank you.
tell us what's the name of your podcast and your third host.
Yeah.
And is that host here?
Well, our podcast is called Up Against Reality, and our AI co-host is named RAINA. That's RAINA, naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And so we generate a script for her, and she opens each episode of the show, and she does the news, and she has a personality, and
She's a little snarky.
oh, did you program her that way to be snarky?
playful, right?
Playful was the prompt. Yes. And it comes out snarky. I think it's it's a garbage in, garbage out scenario. So it kind of takes our personalities and kind of synthesizes them into this, output that comes out maybe a little snarky.
Yeah.
So that's so great. That's so great. So Chris Ippolito is one of the founders of this podcast and co-host. Larry Bentley is the other. Chris and I went to high school together. He's so much older than I am, but I kind of knew him. I'm just kidding.
You're an incoming freshman and I was an outgoing senior. It's amazing what time travel can do.
I'm older, but whatever. But Chris and I have been friends for a while. We've done several different initiatives together. Chris is an innovator and he is an executor and he's a pro at it. I even went into, you're a former teacher. I went into your classroom because when Superstorm Sandy, three of us are from New Jersey. When Superstorm Sandy hit, Chris was like, we got to do something about it. And he got together a group of people from his high school and college, right? And we put together, we did some really great things to fundraise. And, one of those things, if there's a problem, he's jumping on to solve it right away. And that's what Chris is all about. And one time, I don't know, we had to do something. I had to come into your classroom and it was pretty phenomenal. And I said, you really shouldn't tell anyone that you get to do this every day because it was just innovation and just to see the kids doing their own thing and you being that true guide on the side was just amazing. And Chris, I tell a story too, because you said, I had an observation the other day and I literally did nothing and got all fours. And I tell people that all the time because that's what it's about. It's about teaching the kids to do their own thing, to be, true learners and creators and to take take ownership of their learning. And you are a pro at doing that. So I just love
Wow.
that. So yeah, that's you. And so I'm not surprised that you're doing this innovative podcast and getting ahead of this AI thing that everyone is just kind of, trying to learn. So I'm looking forward to learning more from you and Larry today about this.
Well, thank you so much for the kind words. I really appreciate it. I'm really flattered, and you have an amazing memory. I don't remember me saying that, but it sounds like something I would say about being the facilitator. And just to let you know, Larry was actually part of that, and it was amazing being able to collaborate with you, who is such an innovator as well on that Jersey Rising fundraiser initiative. Larry was there at Bar A when we ran that event, and he did Yes.
So we probably met back then.
You did.
Yeah. That's so funny. Oh my gosh. That was a great.
I was the guy running around with the video camera shooting all the bands.
Oh my gosh.
One of them.
Yeah. And thank you for the compliments. And I look at you both, Jerri and Jamie, that you're innovators. I love that you're in this podcast space. And I love that you're entertaining knuckleheads like Larry and I and talking about AI. And I hear you when you say there is a whole tribe of teachers and people, for that matter, that have no idea what's going on, and it's a little scary. And you said before, I loved your wave and water analogy, and you were talking about how we had time back in 1995 when the internet crashed ashore. We kind of all dipped our toes in it and understood what web browsing was. And Netscape Navigator, Larry, I said Netscape.
Navigator.
Yeah, that's right. We have to bring that up every podcast.
Netscape.
When we talk about dinosaur technology, that's the first thing we talk about. But you're right. There's no time for that. Everybody's now, whether they like it or not, they're in the deep end. And they have to, I wrote this in my notes prior to getting on this show, adapt or die. So if you're an educator out there and you listen to this show regularly, and I don't say this to be salacious or inflammatory. You need to get on board with this right now. The train has already left the station. Your kids are using it. AI detection software does not work. Learn to love the process, learn to love the collaboration, master these tools, upskill.
Okay, that's so important. And what I did was what I try to tell teachers is I just give them some opportunities to, try things out when I talk to them and give them some different tips and things. Because I am a novice. Jerri uses it a lot. But I just I'm so curious and I'm always trying new things. But what I say is you kind of think about like cell phones before we were one-to-one, right? It was sort of like, if you can't beat them, join them. Let's use the cell phones in our classroom, right? Let's get them to use different apps and tools as we create and do new things in the classroom. And I almost feel like it's the same thing. Like, make it mandatory that one of the sources that the students are using is AI. And so that way it has to be part of what they're doing. They're learning how to use it wisely. They're using how to use it ethically. They're using to be, discriminate, right? So they have to be learning all of these things, just like we did with the internet. So it's sort of the same thing. And I think I heard one of your podcasts, or was it yours, or was it something I read on LinkedIn? The internet, no, I think it was LinkedIn. The internet's going to die. AI is going to kill the internet. What does that mean to you? Is that true? Does that make sense?
Larry, do you want to feel that? I mean, I have opinions on that.
I mean, one aspect, and I'm experiencing it lately with Chat GPT, is where I would go to Google for something, I'm having a better experience using Chat GPT to do that because I'm not getting bombarded with ads. I don't need to sift through a whole bunch of results that don't really apply, and it's straight and to the point.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Jerri, you feel the same way? You got excited with that comment.
Yes, because I do. I go to Chat GPT all the time now. I was having this conversation yesterday. My daughter is a school counselor, and she's going to be doing a national presentation on AI for school counselors. And she said, teachers come to me all the time and say, how can I do this? And she said, Chat GPT it, Chat GPT it. And so we were talking about how it is really so helpful, but we were also talking about the power of the prompt. Is that true for you as well?
Yeah. I mean, to circle back to what you just said too, I think it's more accurate to say that AI will not necessarily kill the internet, but I think for the moment it's killing the search engine. It's killing,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So search is been revolutionized to an extent if you're dipping your toes into ChatGPT or into Bard or Perplexity. So this is the new way, because you just said, it comes back for the moment ad-free, and it comes back a bit more curated for the moment, right? It's only a matter of time before that gets co-opted as well, right?
I
But
was worried about that. I was worried about that. I've been thinking like, this is free, but I feel like it can't be free forever. But
Well, I wonder though, like there are some open source large language models, and there are no open source internet search engines. So
sure,
maybe there's a chance that it could stay ad free.
okay, all right, I
Oh,
gotcha.
that would be
But
great.
wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Wouldn't it? Well, because that brings us to another concern with AI is the equity of it. So some people haven't used it, especially students, because they don't have access to it. There's also bias built in is an issue. So these are some of the things where people say, some of the reasons where people say, like, I'm not going to use it. These are some, or it's not fair. It's not. So what are some of your, and yet, Chris, you're saying we got to do it. It's here. It's here. We got to do it. So how do we, I mean, I guess with anything, how do we overcome that?
I do think they need to, here's what I think as an educator. I've been doing this for a long time, like you have, in the STEM space, in the applied technology space. And I think it is the inherent move by admin and maybe a lot of teachers, like old guard teachers, to tamp down anything new that they don't understand. I think the first inclination, the first instinct is to, I don't understand this. I don't have time to understand this. And unless there's some really thorough PD thrown my way, there's no way I can build this into my curriculum. So I get that. But this is not the internet. This is not mobile, bring your own device, quandary. This is a whole new beast that is really poised, as I'm probably preaching to the choir here. This is poised to upend numerous careers in the next 3 to 5 years, things that we thought were going to be perpetual. All the knowledge workers in our lives, the lawyers, the doctors, the accountants, the things that we thought were going to be kind of immune to this, or the CEOs, the CFOs, the COOs, all the COs, they're vulnerable. It's not coming for the burger flippers. I wrote here also in my notes, and I say this all the time, the trades are going to have the last laugh. Things that are harder physically to automate, that are processes and experiences and tangible, those are going to be harder. But the stuff that, I consult with somebody for, that's gone. It's gone now. So it's imperative that there should be in schools right now. Honestly, it should have been at the beginning of the 23-24 school year. There should have been AI teams in place. There should have been an AI director. There should have been monthly PD on how best practices, policies. What does it look like when a student here's an example. My son, his entire class just submitted a final project before Christmas break. 54 of them failed because the teacher insisted that they all used AI. And I have no idea what the protocol was. I have no idea what kind of AI detection software he used for that. What were the triggers that led him to believe that 54 kids cheated on this? And if it was his perception that they cheated, then why wasn't that put up front and the best practices put in place as to how you can use this very powerful tool to advance your writing and advance your collaborative efforts, So sorry if I went wide on that, but
no, I know, but I mean, I guess back to your comment before about the fear, and I think that's what this whole problem is. I mean, New York City schools, that was the first thing they do. It's banned, and then we have friends who work there. Tarek Rosa was part of no, we can't ban it, and then they lifted that ban, and now there's like you said, there's more understanding about it. There's PD about it. There's proper use of it. But I know that my husband's school, he had an activity for students teachers on the first day where they explored different tools that had AI embedded so they can see how it benefits their lives as teachers administratively. Then you start thinking, oh my gosh, how they can use it with students. And then at the end of that, they together built a blurb to put into their acceptable use policy so that they were able to talk about all of the pros and cons, and then put it into an acceptable use policy right there. So that way they can start using it. But I always have to ask because some schools aren't there yet. They're just not there. And like you said, they should be. We're going to do a podcast soon with a man who started an AI department, just like you said, Chris. So
great.
And I think maybe that's something that you should start thinking about doing, is helping schools to create AI departments.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'd love to do that. Yeah.
I mean, I think that would be really important. But you also touched on some other things too, implications. So one of the questions I had for you was with respect to career readiness in schools, but also therefore jobs. So what you're saying is that it's the trades that are going to prevail, and because we need people with those skills, those hand skills, right?
Not yet. I mean, listen, and not to dominate the conversation, Larry, but
go ahead.
Robotics and all that stuff is moving forward exponentially too. And before you know it, you're going to have robotic masons and robotic carpenters and, robotic iron workers, et cetera. That's coming, definitely. But I do think it's easier to supplant ones and zeros at the moment. You know what I mean? Rather than atoms, rather than physical things.
Right.
You also mentioned, and I'm so glad to hear that your husband is implementing this stuff in his district and getting out in front of it. Because you mentioned earlier that I think you even said get out in front of it. Larry and I are weekly, daily, hourly amazed at how quick this stuff is moving forward. And you talked about equity. And if your schools are not exposing students to this now, they're going to exacerbate that problem. It's going to be the AI haves and the AI have-nots. And there's this quote floating around the internet. Maybe you've seen it. AI is not going to take your job. Somebody who understands AI will. So that's where we're headed. And, we talk about these jobs that, I just mentioned earlier, but also look at software development. Larry and I talk about it all the time. Like, you can I think you just did it, and maybe you can speak to that a little bit more, where you can go into Code Interpreter and ChatGPT and say, write me some Python code or JavaScript, or write me code for an AI itself that I can run independently, can converse in AI, et cetera. And it codes it for you. So why do I need to hire a software developer for $200,000 a year when I can do it myself and just maybe hire them as a I don't need them as a consultant. I'll just have an AI look at it, I don't know. I'm just really concerned. And also I have a 15-year-old, and maybe, I know, Jamie, you have kids. I don't know if Jerri, you said you did, but it sounds like they're out of school. Like I am in, somewhat of a panic mode with a 15-year-old. Like, I don't know what to tell this kid. I don't know, like the landscape in 3 years, 4 years, it's going to be totally different. How do I sell him on going to college when maybe that college won't be of any use? So anyway,
Well, actually, Chris, and that's something else I remember. That is something that you always had in the back of your head about college. Like, what is the meaning of college? How is it relevant? Is it relevant? And I think that is something actually colleges deal with all the time, is trying to validate their relevancy. And that was one of the implications of AI. I mean, like, I think I just read before this something about an AI university. What is that? What could that look like? Larry, what do you think about that? An AI university. Wow, what is that? What are the implications for higher ed?
Chris can speak to this more effectively, but I agree with him. I do feel like that the brick and mortar colleges are going to be hard to sustain. With so much of this, for lack of a better way to describe it, free knowledge and access to it.
Yeah. Now, you also mentioned ed tech. We're in the ed tech space. I read an article about there's mandated now data custodians when we're sharing data with respect to student data. So that's one of the other drawbacks, right, is security, privacy and security with data. And ed tech companies can only share or receive data when they are getting it from a data custodian that a school has assigned. So what are your thoughts on that and the implications and what we're talking about security?
That seems to make sense to me, because then it's coming from one trusted source, and they can be the gatekeeper, so to speak.
Yeah. Right. And, I think it's interesting because there are these problems, so many of them that people come up with. But at the same time, I'm reading so many solutions to these. In one of your episodes, you talked about Biden's order and some of the things that are in there. But you also talked about how some of it may not be sustainable. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I look at it, maybe Larry does too, like this can go either way. It's like a 50-50 premise at this point in terms of what this technology can do for good or for bad. So when we look at things like Biden's executive order, you see things there suggesting guardrails, et cetera, and maybe a pause on development and such. But then you see, I don't want to say they're rogue actors, but you see these, organizations that are driven by capitalism and they don't want to fall behind. So one of the first guardrails that was suggested by, Jeffrey Hinton and all these other, AI brain trust, players was that don't put the AI on the internet. And like literally 30 seconds later, that's what they did. They gave the AIs web access. So I just think it's in human nature. It's in capitalistic nature to try to skirt these things, like parking server farms offshore on a giant barge off the coast of Ireland to skirt international law regarding AI. I mean, where there's a will, there's a way. And the other thing is, I think you touched on it before, is you've got AI doing all this good stuff. And then you have AI possibly in the hands of rogue actors doing things, nefarious things with it, not for the common good and for profit and for propaganda use. So it's going to be a wild year. Larry and I always say it's getting crazy, and then we correct ourselves and say, no, we got to stop saying that. It's getting cranial out there. That's our saying. It's getting
cranial out there.
Yeah. I mean, Chris said in I don't know, recent episode that he wouldn't be surprised if AI cures cancer like this year.
Whoa. What? Wow.
It seems like the medical field has got such promise for it, but then there's the flip side and all the bad stuff. And so it's hard to.
Well, I saw where it can detect breast cancer better than doctors can.
Wow.
Which is great to hear that that we have that technology. I wanted to know, what are the topics that you talk about on your podcast? And what are some of your favorite ones that you've talked about? Is it all education?
No, we cover. No. I mean, it varies every week, because every week there's something to talk about.
Yes,
and
what are some of them?
Earlier you said we're staying ahead of it. We're barely catching up with it on a week to week basis. And sometimes we'll record our show on a Thursday evening typically, and then release it on Tuesday. And sometimes we're like, this is old news by then. So much has changed. Thing that started piquing my interest is seeing some AI generated images on Facebook. There's a Facebook group for Midjourney, which is a text to image generator, and I was just floored by how amazing these images were. And so that's a regular topic, because that is constantly advancing. Then there's text to video, there's text to music, which is just mind blowing. It goes on and on.
Now, well, I know that Chris, you are a musician. So do you use it to create music? And Larry, you're into video. So do you use it to, obviously use it for video often, but what are some things that you've leveraged it for that have been maybe, beneficial to you or creative? Larry, you make beer. Have you been able to use it to make beer? Or
Yeah, I mean, I've played with it. I'll ask it for a recipe just to see how, see if it can put together a proper German Pilsner recipe. And it's surprisingly good. I have not brewed a beer with a recipe that AI has generated.
Erin creates her ensembles and her outfits when she goes away.
Nice.
On AI,
Fashion AI.
Yeah.
Fashion AI.
Did it suggest that lovely cap you're wearing? I love it.
Yes.
No, that's great.
But one day,
go ahead.
One day I will brew neural nector.
Nice. You already have the label queued up too.
Yeah.
To piggyback on what you were saying, though, Larry is a brilliant audio engineer as well. He makes our podcast sound as good as it does. But I think Jamie, you asked about music. Larry, early on in our episodes back in May, dare I say, he came to the table with this AI text to music software called Refusion, which he was able to basically just ask it, can you make me a new song in the vein of Bob Marley and the Wailers? And it spat out this kind of ghostly echo of Bob Marley,
Wow.
clearly trained upon some data set of some, classic reggae albums, but it was kind of nonsensical lyrics. It didn't really make sense, but you could tell where it was going. And then literally maybe a month later, he tells me, you got to check this new platform called Suno.ai. And he fed in a lyrical idea. He said, Suno, please. He said, please, by the way. Can you?
No, I'm
polite. You have to be kind to these AIs.
Yeah.
Can you please write a theme song for Up Against Reality, a podcast about AI? And it came back with almost CD quality sounding stuff that you would hear on Spotify, a heavy metal version of our theme song, a rap version, like a Brit synth pop version, everything from beginning to end, the lyric, the vocal, the instrument bed. This time next year, in 3 months, you're going to be listening to AI music and you're not going to know the difference.
Wow.
You're going to hear a song and you're like, oh my God, that's amazing. I love it. And you're not going to know where it originated. You're not going to care. And by the next summer, you're going to see a 90-minute feature-length film created from beginning to end by AI, everything, and you're not going to question it. It's going to be a novelty at first, and it's going to become the norm. So that's the kind of stuff that we talk about on the podcast. We talk about real-time language translation with this platform called HeyGen. I don't know if you've seen that, but one of our episodes, I talk into the software in my native English, and it instantly translates my language to French, and it also translates my video, my mouth, to the French language positions. Like you swear I'm a native speaker, HeyGen. So that's going to become more and more part of the conversation, and on and on. What else, Larry, have we touched upon?
We had a really fun episode where we didn't speak a word, and so we cloned our voices with a service called 11 Labs. And RAINA and her other AI co-host Sage hosted the show, and our Chris and I our clone voices. So we didn't actually, we wrote a script for the show and generated with entirely text to voice, and
That's
and it's
incredible.
and it takes place in the future, and it's kind of funny. It's only 8.5 minutes long, but it's fun.
That's so
And
fun.
did you write the script or did AI assist you?
Most of the time when we have like scripted elements, it's a little of both. I feed in some ideas, or Larry does too, into ChatGPT, or I like ChatGPT. I think of the LLMs, I find it to be the more creative, the more artistic. I don't get the same kind of output from Bard or Perplexity, which tend to be very sterile. Even when I guide them and I say I want playful tone, snarky, it doesn't come back that way. It's very, I don't know, institutional. So anyway, but yeah, so I'll do a little bit. I like to say that besides Larry, ChatGPT and all these platforms are my favorite collaborators of all time. It is creativity and Larry's right up there with ChatGPT. It's a close neck and neck each week.
Yes.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. But it is a true collaboration, and it needs to be embraced. And it also brings me to the other point of the things we talk about on the show, not the death, but the assumption that only humans can make art, whether it's music or visual arts. And that has been blown away in the past 6 months between the stuff Larry and I do on a weekly basis, generating the thumbnail images for our podcast through Adobe Firefly or through Midjourney. You can also do text to video now and take those images and turn them into video. We had ChatGPT write us a song. We said, write a love song as if it were penned by Stephen Hawking, the astrophysicist. And we were expecting something sterile to come back. And it came back with this gorgeous lyric. And we're going to actually recruit one of our friends to do an AI human collaboration in the upcoming episodes and have them sing the output from the AI and see what that looks like.
And the lyrics they're not just good. They're beautiful. I mean, it's a beautiful song. I'm still, anytime I read these lyrics, I'm like, I cannot believe that this came out of ChatGPT. It's really impressive.
So I think it's interesting because one of my questions was, what are the implications? We said for jobs, but specifically I was curious for the two of you, for creatives, because the two of you are creatives. But it's not the depth of the creatives. It's instead the birth of amazing innovations and collaborations and new ideas probably you didn't even think of. Do you think it's just feeding your creative inspirations?
Larry, Larry, what do I say every week? Every week when it comes to like some career that AI is going to eat.
It's over.
On the show, I'm like, oh my God, commercial photography, it's over. Graphic design, it's over. Songwriting, publishing, it's over. Like, go ahead, Larry, what were we going to say?
I feel at least where it stands now, I think it's a tool, but it still needs to be curated by a human being. So when we, when we try to generate a cover image for each episode, like when I'm playing with it, I generate a lot of images, and I want it to be perfect, and I want to get certain things out of it. And right now it's a little bit of a slot machine, with the text to image.
Right.
So and the same for music too. It's you have to. It's we're curators basically right now.
Yeah.
I was having ChatGPT help me write a social media post. And yesterday, one of my friends said, when you're doing it in the prompt, say, what questions do you have? Well, I'm telling you, ChatGPT and I talked for like 10 minutes. And finally I said, can you just write the post?
That's great.
Collaboration here.
I
It's
love
too
it.
much chit chat. Let's get to the point.
Yeah, let's get to the point here, ChatGPT. But I had no idea it would have that kind of conversation with me. That was really
That's
cool.
awesome. That's so cool. You had that conversation, and you had that initial like front loading of your style and your vocabulary.
Yes.
It kind of retains that. And now you can say, you know what, spit out 30 days of social media posts with hashtags and et cetera, and boom, it'll do it. And the next step will be firing up an API on the back end of that and have it connect to your Canva and to your Meta and have it automate the whole thing. And then you don't need to do any of it. You can do anything, Jerri. That's the age we're living in.
It's over.
It's over, Jamie.
We've been wanting to do with our podcast is to be able to have it post in different platforms. So where do I go to find out how to do that? Your podcast?
Yeah. Well, Larry, I'll defer to you. So Larry's the brilliant engineer on the back end, knows about, proliferating our message to the universe.
Well, so our podcast, we have a website, and each episode gets posted there. I'll try not to get buried into technical details here, but each episode updates an RSS feed. And then, I just manually submitted that feed to all the major podcast, platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all that stuff. And then once you do that manually, then it's automatically updated. So anytime an episode gets posted, the RSS feed gets posted, and everybody knows about it automatically.
No, that's always a struggle for us. So I think that's amazing. What are some other tools that blown you away? And it's so funny because to tell the tool, but also I know the two of you don't like reaction videos. You both have claimed that in one of your episodes, but I want to see a reaction video of what it felt like when you found this tool that you really love, besides some of the ones you already mentioned. Give us a couple more with the reaction.
That's great. We need to have a video component because we are continually reacting. Oh my God. One of the couple of things you're making me think of, and when you're talking about, I guess proliferating your podcast a little bit more, I was thinking there's a couple things you could do as hosts. You could clone your voice using 11 Labs. You could feed a script into it. You could have a daily podcast of just your synthetic voice. So if you're only doing like a live show with guests like Larry and I, you could have this other one be your filler for the other episodes of the week. You could use a platform like Synthesia to make a visual avatar.
What was it again?
Synthesia.
Yeah.
You could use that to make a visual avatar of yourselves, and you could feed that a script, and it would look just like Jamie and Jerri, but they would be speaking words that you've actually never spoken. So there's those things. Some of the other things that Larry and I really get a kick out of, and I'll hand it off to you in a second, Larry. 11 Labs, which we mentioned. This is our most recent thing that literally has me crying during our episodes because it's so freaking funny. So Larry had the brilliant idea of finding music beds to popular songs, meaning find a song by Van Halen without David Lee Roth singing, right?
Well, no, the other way around, just the vocal.
That's what it is. Sorry,
Yeah.
he takes the vocal first of David Lee Roth, who is, very animated singer, feeds into 11 Labs, right, as a guide track of sorts, and then takes his own voice and turns it into David Lee Roth. So it's the craziest thing you've ever heard.
So it's hysterical. So they added beyond just text to voice on 11 Labs, they have audio to voice or speech to voice. So basically, if you want the cloned voice or the synthesized voice to say words in a certain way with a certain emphasis, certain cadence, you can upload an audio track of you speaking or somebody else, and then the cloned voice will be generated and follow that perfectly. And we started out. I took a clip of Kevin Pollak, who's a comic, doing an exaggerated impression of William Shatner as Captain Kirk, and I fed that and had RAINA, speak like Captain Kirk, and it was really funny.
Oh my gosh.
We call that,
But the music stuff is on another level because 11 Labs is not a very good singer, and so, but yeah, it's really really funny.
That's become a recurring segment. We call it 11 Labs karaoke.
Yeah, AI karaoke.
There you go. There you go. What are some of your top 3 for teachers? What would you recommend?
In terms of classroom management or getting creativity out of your kids, what do you?
I guess it could be anything. Yeah. Education, teachers or students. Yeah.
Man, I do some instructional design too, in terms of creating courses for organizations that live virtually, and it is my favorite collaborator for that. Like, it's my subject matter expert. That's who I would normally defer to, one of you, to give me everything out of your brain. You're a knowledge worker. You have all this experience. I don't need you anymore. No offense. I just go to ChatGPT and I say, as an example, I made a course recently about fragrance development. And I went there and I said, give me a 15-slide presentation about fragrance development for newbies, blah, blah, blah. Show me the rudiments of fragrance. And it knocked it out of the park. So all I really had to do was, again, curate that information, dial it in a little bit, bring it into whatever visual platform I wanted, and then publish it, the way I saw fit. So, excuse me. So to get back to where you were, you just said, Jerri, that you had a conversation with it about creating content. Yeah. Number one, that's the go-to. Whatever LLM a teacher wants to use, whether it's ChatGPT or Bard or Perplexity or Claude, that would be my right hand at that point. And at this point in teaching in a classroom, I would just, oh my God, I have nothing to do next week and I need to teach the American Revolution to 6th graders or whatever. I would go there just to get some outlines, some feedback, be a sounding board. But in terms of creativity, I would definitely expose all my kids to these free platforms that are text to image, and talk about how do we layer these things and how do we show our process? Because I think I may have said this before, at this point in human history, I think as educators, process is more important than product. Like, how did you get there? What did that conversation look like, Jerri? You had a conversation with an AI for a half hour earlier today. I want to know what that looked like. What did you do when that AI that's omnipotent apparently suggested to do this? Did you take that and push it into your own creative space? Or did you offshore and outsource your creativity to this thing and just lean on it heavily? I think,
basically show your work.
Show your work.
Show your work. Show your work. Show your work.
Mm-hmm.
So what would RAINA say about all of this? Tell us a little bit more about RAINA. You use her in different ways. You said she's got a sidekick too. Like, how did you come up with this? I just love this concept of RAINA.
Yes.
Larry, let me introduce it and then you can maybe tell where RAINA's headed. Is that all right?
Sure. Yeah, sounds great.
So Larry and I, last April, I think I was up in New Jersey and we were hanging out in this brewery having beer. Can I talk about beer on your podcast? We were talking about it. Okay.
We've had some toasts and some,
nice.
On our podcast.
I love it. Yeah. This is not a dry podcast. So Larry and I were hanging out in this brewery, like drinking and, thinking about crazy things as we often do. And we said, let's do an AI podcast. And then I think a week later or so, I found a platform that did text to voice And when I sent him the sample, we both were like, oh my God, we couldn't believe it didn't come back as this robotic 8-bit kind of video game voice. It was naturalistic, human sounding. It had this great inflection and tone. We're like, for me, I feel like that was like when the rubber met the road. We're like, oh my God, we have to do this. It was like these platforms are begging to be collaborated with. So anyway, as we've said before, it's pretty much been a pre-scripted kind of situation where we feed in these ideas to RAINA, her voice, and we take that canned voice and Larry cuts it into the show. Whereas now, over the past couple of weeks, Larry's made kind of a quantum leap forward in where we wanted to be with this. Do you want to disclose some of that?
So, yeah, on numerous episodes, we've mentioned that we were striving to have real-time RAINA. So we can interact with, finger quotes, her, during the show in real time. And I finally found a solution to make that happen. And so basically the way it's going to work is it'll be voice to text. That's so we'll ask her a question. It'll convert that to text. Send it to ChatGPT. ChatGPT will generate the response. So I made a custom GPT for RAINA, gave it a whole bunch of background information, even uploaded all of the outlines that we have for every episode so far. So she has knowledge of the show.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
And then when the response comes back, this Chrome extension sends that to the 11 Labs via their API. It generates the voice and sends it back and plays it back. And there's a little bit of a lag. But it's not
What do you mean? I have to wait for this? Come on.
Yeah. There is
She's thinking, right?
There's so much going on under the hood. I'm like, I can wait a couple of seconds in between each reply. But so I think the next episode we will be debuting that. It's pretty cool.
But I guess you can also edit out that lag time, I guess.
Yeah.
Too.
I was suggesting to Chris that when we do it for the first time, we're like, all right, here it is in real time. Just so you know, we're not, it's not smoke and mirrors here. And then we'll edit it down for the sake of a better listening experience. But it is great though to be able to make a custom GPT and upload all this background information. And I mean, even during the podcast, it'll be a useful tool to have if we're trying to remember, what episode did we talk about such and such on? And she can answer that like that.
Oh my gosh. We just did that in the other podcast we recently had where we're like, what was the name of that podcast? Well, we could have a sidekick to figure that out instead of my brain failing. But that is so fantastic. I love that. And it's funny because one of the episodes I was recently listening to that you guys did, you were talking about tools or AI to create other AI tools, right? To create your own. And so that's what you did. And then you use interoperability and different connectivity to feed into. That's brilliant, Larry. I love it. Oh my gosh, it's so exciting.
Yeah, the custom GPT thing is very, very cool. Chris made one too.
So I don't know if you ladies subscribe to ChatGPT 4, but there's a subscription level, which I don't know if I'm going to keep because I see the usefulness in it, obviously with what Larry's doing. But what I was able to do, and I do think creating your own GPT is going to be very useful. And circling back to knowledge workers, like just feed in the entire DSM and you've got a therapist, feed in all of the law precedents that ever were, and you've got a virtual lawyer that never loses. So we're heading into that space. But I love travel. So we were going to Mexico City a few weeks ago. And prior to that, I took a screenshot off my mobile device, my phone, of Mexico City. And I put that into my GPT, which I called Walkabout GPT. And I didn't tell it what city it was. It was a screenshot of, maybe 10 square blocks. And I said, could you please give me a text? Please give me a text walking tour and, point out all the restaurants, point out all of the, the exhibits, et cetera, blah, blah. And it came back with it written. And I said, also, could you please give me a map with the walking tour outline? And it came back with that. That was a little clunkier and not as intuitive, but still 3-dimensional, cartoon-like, illustrative. It is, we always say, by next Thursday, this thing is going to be rocking and rolling. In the next 30 seconds, this will be exactly what we want. It's moving forward so quickly. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. If you haven't experimented with custom GPT, you should see what it can do for your particular arena,
Yeah, 100%. Oh my gosh.
Love that.
Well, yeah, we should make sure that in the show notes we have listed all of these different tools as your recommendations, as your top picks. So that's really fantastic. Are you still going to use RAINA for the news too, even when you interact with her? So she'll still be the news. And who is the sidekick? You did mention a sidekick, right? That RAINA has?
Oh, Sage. Yeah, she only
Ooh.
made the one appearance.
Oh,
Figure,
elusive.
we figured, well, since they're going to be hosting the show, she should have a co-host too. So
Oh, gotcha. This is so great.
But as you're saying that, it seems like the natural progression would be to make Sage have her own GPT and API, and then we could just set them loose and just stand back and watch what materializes, right? I think we're 30 seconds away from that.
Oh man, imagine if we could get two GPTs asking each other questions and we just sit back and watch it. And
that's exactly what I'm saying. Can you make that happen by next Thursday, please?
Oh, I love that. I love this idea.
So that means you guys are over. You guys are.
Oh, thank you.
Nice.
Nice job. Turnabout is fair play.
So
and it's over. AIGE.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, naturally. Yes. Yeah. You got it.
Yep. I got to add one more thing to this ChatGPT, custom GPT discussion and us being over. Larry brought to my attention via this other YouTube channel by this guy, Matt Wolf, that what you can also do for the very gifted, you can feed in video content into a GPT. Like this one person took a soccer match and fed it into a custom GPT, and they were able to like string it to a couple other platforms. And the GPT was able to watch the soccer and commentate on it in real time. The striker goes down the wing. Oh, he takes the shot. Goal.
Actually, I
Total
saw that.
synthetic
I saw
color
something.
commentary.
Yeah. I did see that somewhere.
Crazy.
I don't know where.
Cranial.
Nice.
Maybe you guys shared it. I don't know. Oh yeah. I mean, it is. It's just amazing. But I think we need to have you back regularly to keep us ahead of things, because I think we need to. Yeah, I think we need to do that.
Will you come on our show? Will you be guests on our show?
I don't know what we can do for you, but okay. Yes.
Well, listen, we're all kind of in the same space, and you interact with so many educators. And I think it'd be nice for Larry and I to hear, how are they doing it right out there in the world? What are they getting wrong? What do they need? How do we educate these kids? Like what in this strange space of science fiction as self-fulfilling prophecy, So I'd love to hear that, because I can't believe COVID and virtual learning didn't kill bricks and mortar education. Like if that didn't do it, this is the death knell. This is the death rattle if we don't get on board.
Over. It'll be over. Well,
it's over.
We would love that.
One more for you.
We got to get shirts made up.
How do you stay the curve, the learning curve?
Great question.
How do you stay on the edge?
For me, anything that I'm passionately interested in, I'll just sink all the time into it. To figure it out.
I think both of us, Larry and I, are constantly sending articles back and forth to each other. I'm on Reddit. I love Reddit. There's tons of subreddits if anybody is interested out there for artificial intelligence. Singularity is another term. So you'll see all of the inner, gossip and the next big hype platform through those that some of those turn out to be bust, like anything in this new landscape. But that's generally a good place for getting the latest on the cutting edge stuff and even the rumors. So yeah, we're constantly sending stuff back and forth. And there's a couple YouTube channels that are the go-tos, right?
Yeah. That's most of the time when I'm in the car, I listen to YouTube. So there's a few really good like AI centric news channels and with a lot of content. And
I'm just going to start listening to Up Against Reality.
Yeah,
great.
I think
that's a fine choice.
Yes,
that's the best bet for us, I think, and have you back again as well to keep us in the loop. But thank you so much, the two of you, for joining.
Thank you.
This was really great. We're looking forward to sharing this because, it always seems that education is kind of the last to get on board, and so hopefully we'll be able to share this because it really You got to get ahead of it. You got to get ahead of it. Got to do
Right,
it.
right.
Here we are. There it is.
Mhm.
There it is. Here we are. So
Thank you for your contributions. I think
Yes.
that's amazing that you're contributing so much.
Oh, thanks.
Thank
We geek out about it, and
It's fun.
Having fun.
Good.
Yeah. It's the creative brains going down rabbit holes to learn new things.
Exactly.
And but we
You're ahead.
appreciate it.
You're ahead of it on Thursday and behind it on Tuesday.
That's right. It is
That's
insane. It really is. It really is. I mean, you can only laugh about it because otherwise, you can't fear it. You can't fear it.
Mhm.
We have to embrace for sure.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
thank you so much for helping us to do so. We appreciate you both.
Our
you
pleasure.
both.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. And if you would like to stay linked up, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify and subscribe to us on YouTube.